In the last hour, the Transport Secretary has apologised to commuters as he laid the blame with rail bosses for the chaos since timetables were changed 2 weeks ago. Chris Grayling has also launched an inquiry into what has gone so wrong since Govia Thameslink changed the time of every service in the biggest shake-up in decades. Our political correspondent, Simon Harris, is in Westminster this evening. Commuters wanted the government to act. Is this enough, what he said a few hours ago?
Well, for many commuters, the answer is almost certainly no, because while Mr Grayling conceded what they already know, that the disruption is unacceptable, he went on to say there were no easy solutions. And GTR, Govia Thameslink Railway, will now try to introduce its new timetable in stages, and that will take months. For many of us, the Monday morning commute is simply tiresome. But for passengers on Thameslink and Great Northern, the post-weekend blues are nothing compared to the misery of this chaotic excuse for a railway timetable.
Finally managed to get on board and I felt like a sardine, a human sardine.
They've just cancelled everything or delayed everything. So it's absolutely a nightmare this morning.
There were a lot of delays and then very slow train.
The stops they were meant to stop at, they decided not to.
I stood at my station, 2 trains, which on their app showed that they were leaving, then never arrived.
It wasn't meant to be like this. The government has spent £7 billion of taxpayers' money modernising the Thameslink line. New trains, new routes, new reliable timetables. The promise from Govia Thameslink Railway sounded almost too good to be true. It was. On one day last week, nearly 1 in 10 GTR trains was either cancelled or more than half an hour late.
We are sorry to announce that the 10:54 Thameslink service to Brighton has been cancelled.
Commuters have been complaining to their MPs. The MPs thought they would get a meeting today with the minister in charge, but even that timetable began to unravel.
We were expecting a meeting with the Minister. I've just received an email saying that meeting has now been cancelled, which is not surprising but pretty chaotic, even for this government.
Well, it has a terrible impact on commuters. People can't get to work, they're missing job interviews, people are unable to get home to see their loved ones in time, so it's ruining people's lives on a daily basis.
The MPs complain of poor communication from GTR bosses, making matters worse. Once again today, GTR declined our invitation to talk. Speaking in the Commons in the last hour, the Transport Secretary promised a special compensation scheme for commuters and announced an inquiry into what went wrong, saying if GTR is found to be at fault, the company could be stripped of its franchise.
I will not be afraid, Mr Speaker, to take action, enforcement action, where it is necessary to do so, but it is right to go through the process of the inquiry and understand where fault truly lies. I will not hold back from taking appropriate action if the review finds that there has been negligent behaviour.
Mr Grayling's critics will no doubt be asking tonight why it's taken him so long to read the Riot Act to the rail industry. Labour thinks he should resign. One person who appears to be considering that this evening is Sir Peter Hendy, the boss of Network Rail. In an interview with ITV News, he was asked if he should resign, and he said, "Maybe I should." Nina.
Simon, thank you. Next, it is Sadiq Khan's catchphrase that he wants to get out to the world. London is open. But after 6 months of violence on the capital's streets, the question being asked abroad and here is London safe? More than 60 people have been killed this year already. Donald Trump has claimed hospitals are like war zones because of stabbing victims. And last night, while filming, an Australian TV crew had their cameras stolen by masked men who said they were armed. So how damaging is all this for London's international reputation? Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Laurel, which royal topped the list?
Australian reporter Laurel Irving is live in London, unaware she's about to become a news story herself. A car dash cam captures 2 cyclists approaching. Despite the warm weather, they're wearing ski masks.
They were big guys, you know, they had ski masks, they were calm but aggressive, you know, that was the thing.
Today, Laurel and her cameraman Jimmy Cannon relived the moment they were robbed of their expensive television camera at Exmouth Market in Islington.
He came up to me while we were filming, and he just quietly but aggressively said, "Oi, oi, oi, mate, there's a gun in my jacket. I don't want to make a scene. Unclip the camera and hand it to me now."
That moment was also recorded on a dash cam. Laurel doesn't realise what's happening until Jimmy warns her about the gun.
I still couldn't believe it, and I said to him, well, show me a gun then. But then I realised that this was an incredibly silly reaction, and so I just let it go. Common sense kicked in.
With quick thinking, Laurel used her phone to photograph the camera thief.
London's reputation, I think, is starting to suffer because of what's happening with crime in the city.
London's growing reputation for violent crime was reflected in today's newspaper headlines. Recent days have seen a series of high-profile robberies. The comedian Michael McIntyre was mugged on the school run in Golders Green. In Regent Street, members of the public intervened to try to stop a jewellery raid by thieves on mopeds.
Well, I don't want trouble. I do not want any trouble with you. Yeah? Seriously, no.
In Rotherhithe, a group of women are taking part in a self-defence course, a community response to the growing violence.
There seems to be a lot more criminal activity and a lot more violent crimes at the moment. I think, more importantly, people are getting a little bit more brazen and they're happening during the day.
Can you understand why Londoners are scared, why some people are taking self-defence classes, why people are too frightened to do the school run?
Well, I absolutely understand why people are scared when they are seeing and reading about crime and seeing crime. And I'm a Londoner, you know, this is my city. So I get that perception. I think we've got to be really clear, you know, this is crime that is affecting particular parts of London more than others.
We've got few police officers any time since 2003. So I'm paying for additional resources, and the police we've got
It's not making any difference.
Well, that's not true. It is making a difference because I've seen the arrests made. I've seen the knives taken off our streets. I've seen the guns taken off our streets.
Are you ashamed when you see headlines like today, Wild West London?
I've been out with the Violent Crime Task Force when they've made arrests across London. I'm not happy, nor is it acceptable for there to be a situation where any Londoner feels they're scared about their personal safety.
But it's not just Londoners. Foreign visitors too have reason to worry. And that is damaging the Mayor's message that London is open. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Simon's here. Any sense of what's behind this current rise in crime?
Depends who you ask. Every time I ask the Mayor, he blames the government for cutting police numbers. You ask the Home Office, senior officials say that London has more police per head of population than anywhere else. If you ask the Met, senior officers point the finger of blame at drugs gangs. They're also eager to defend their records, saying that crime involving offenders on mopeds peaked a year ago and is now down by 50%. Sadiq Khan says he's still lobbying the government for more police, but it's worth pointing out that as of today, he still hasn't had a meeting with the new Home Secretary, who got the job more than a month ago.
What is your assessment of what damage this does to London, potentially?
Well, we know that the video of Michael McIntyre was seen around the world. We know what Donald Trump thinks about London as a war zone, and that attack on the Australian TV camera crew was reported in that country. Think back 6 years, London's reputation could hardly have been higher in the wake of the Olympics. There's a real fear that this crime wave will tarnish the brand.
All right, Simon, thank you very much. Thank you.
A former suspect in the Stephen Lawrence murder inquiry appeared in court today, accused of being involved in the supply of cannabis. 42-year-old Jamie Aycourt, who's from South London, was extradited here from Spain, where he was arrested last month. Simon Harris was at Westminster Magistrates Court.
For much of his adult life, Jamie Aycourt's name has been linked to the killing of Stephen Lawrence. He was one of 5 original suspects, although he was never charged and has always denied any involvement in the teenager's murder and the allegations against him.
And these are all things that have been twisted to make me look like the bad guy.
Last month, Aycourt, now 42 years old, was arrested in Barcelona after a joint operation by the Spanish and British authorities. Last night, he was flown back to Britain. Today, as prison vans arrived at Westminster Magistrates Court, photographers were hoping to catch a glimpse of him as he was driven from Heathrow Airport. Aycourt is charged with plotting to supply between 3 and 4 tonnes of cannabis. The court was told he made up to 35 trips abroad as part of the conspiracy. Aycourt looked suntanned and relaxed as he walked into the courtroom. He was wearing a black T-shirt and black jeans. His hair was tied in a ponytail. He sat in the glass-fronted dock holding a book, standing briefly to give his full name, Jamie Arthur Aycourt, and his date of birth in 1976. Aycourt's lawyer didn't apply for him to be released on bail, and he was remanded in custody. After a case lasting 5 minutes, he was taken back to the cells. Aycourt will appear again in court in Kingston upon Thames on July the 5th. Simon Harris, ITV News.